Yeah, sorry. I had to come online and talk because I have things to share, lots of stuff to say. Mostly it's about gaslighting a little bit. It's about gaslighting, it's about mental health, and it's about family members. We're gonna put it all together and have it like make some sense because it makes sense. Oh, it makes sense. Oh my god. All of those topics today are related. Okay. Um so you might be like, how are they related? Like, what are you saying? What are explain. I will explain. So I saw this video by Madison Brown. I feel like that is her name. And in the video, she is talking about how her she made a song called Scapegoat. Scapegoat is this song that's about how her family has been gaslighting her for a very long time. Okay, and made her feel like it's her fault when all of this stuff goes wrong. It's like, obviously it isn't her fault, but they just made her feel that way, which made her feel very bad. And it was like this, this cycling thing that happened. And it was brutal. It was brutal. And that wasn't good. Um, but she talked about how she was in this space where it was hard to realize, like, if she was really if she was really wrong, or if like what her family was saying was like correct, because like they keep saying it over and over again, so it must be true. Now, for me personally, this has been my issue with the American experience, and just being like an African woman, a black woman. Like, I don't think that this experience holds true for everyone. I'm not even going to try to include other people in the narrative at all. If if it doesn't apply, let it fly. But if you hear this and you resonate with it, I'm saying like this has been my experience. So I had this conversation with my mother today, right? And so what I had to explain to her is how there's a situation that's happening with our family, right? Now, I'm not saying there's a situation that's happening with me and then there's a situation that's happening with her. Like, there's one situation, right? And it involves us both, but it also involves more people. And so because it's like a situation, there are like challenges and struggles that I want to say we are going through, except it's not really a we thing, it's a me thing. Because like I am doing, and I have been doing all of the work to try to resolve the conflicts happening in this situation. I was trying to describe to her how I was like, we're not getting justice. We're not getting justice. And she was like, you're not getting justice. And so I explained to her, I had to bring in an example from someone else. Like, there's a person in this situation who is not a member of our family, but like when we're talking about justice, we're typically talking about like resources like time or money or access or something like that, right? So I literally gave her a direct example of like, here is someone who is not in our family who has this resource that you don't have. And I like outlined in like 5 different ways. I'm like, they have this and they're able to do this, and you don't have that. And so stop pointing the finger and saying like, I don't have that, because here's an example of you not having it. And that's what I'm saying, like our family is going through something. And now when you're not a person who is actually solving the problem, sometimes it's really hard for you to understand that the problem exists for you. Like, I actually brought this up the other day, and it was really frustrating because someone's like, can you explain this in layman's terms? And the answer is like, no, really, like, no. I'm not going to explain like history for you, because like I don't want to. Like, I'm not your personal historian, and like, you can go Google shit. But the kind of long short answer to this, or yeah, the long short answer is like, there are many examples in history where someone has been wronged, and then like someone else has received reparations for the wrong, and that just hasn't happened for Black Americans, and that is a really big issue for me. And I think that there are many downstream effects of that not being real. And one thing that I've learned traveling through Europe, because there are so many like examples of like Nazi campsites, historic campsites that you can go visit, and you can do tours. There are museums. There are people from both sides. There are like Jews, right, who live and will talk to you about it, and then there are German people who will talk to you about the Holocaust specifically. And everyone understands how it was wrong, and reparations were actually paid, and like quite a lot of laws have changed in order to ensure that that does not happen again. That is very specific to Germany and Europe, and has nothing to do with like America, right? In America, on the other hand, and I was explaining this to someone the other day, when I was kind of entering my other career path, I came across someone who was a student at Stanford. Like, I've come across, there's a lot of people who went to either one of my schools who've gone on to Ivy League schools, right? So either Berkeley High or like the University of California. Those are schools that produce very smart people. They go on to do great things, right? So of course, in those places, like, you're going to run across people who are going to go to those institutions. Okay, so I did, and that this person at a time was a really close friend of mine, and she kind of explained to me how like Princeton is a place that has quite a lot of people who are descendants of plantation owners, and that means that they are like white families who have their wealth as a direct result of slavery. There are no examples here of ex-slaves who have their wealth because of reparations. And it's not even just like wealth, they're like livelihood. Like, no slave has ever benefited or been compensated for slavery. It was just something that stopped. And the reason that that is important is because, like, in one generation, you can even if you are a person with not very many means, you can accumulate a small amount of wealth that would amount to you having a piece of property that could be handed on to the next generation. So for a poor family, it might take one whole generation to accumulate one house. Like, in my family, that is what happened. It took one generation to accumulate one home, and that was handed down to like my mom. Like that, it took a whole generation to do that. So maybe one house is not like everyone's like idea of this great amount of wealth, but it also isn't nothing. And there are quite a lot of people who are coming into families that have like net zero wealth. They have nothing to hand on to their children. And that's especially the case for Black Americans who also have no like experiences to hand on. There's no stories, there's no positive stories of like integrating into the society and having these like matriculating experiences that relate to institutions or ways of life that are available now that you could go on to exercise or participate in now. And so basically, for Black Americans, the entire experience was A, traumatic. There was never any therapy offered. B, it was literally a waste of time. It was a waste of time in life. Like, you should have just like schmilled, okay, all of those people so that you could just stop, like, because otherwise there's nothing. You're wasting bodies and lineages. Like, send these people back to where they came from. In all honesty, like, that's what needs to happen. Like, move these people back. okay, so that they can go back. And I understand that like Africans sold other Africans into slavery. That's great. Give the money back and then send the people back. Just make it right. Do something. But you can't just keep the people here to not become a part of society, to not become a part of any society, like to not do anything. It's just crazy. And it's like a waste, and it is very frustrating. And so what does this have to do with like mental health and kind of like Black women in society? At least for me, I personally feel like there is the same gaslighting that I think Madison described with her mother is the gaslighting that's happening in society, especially like if you guys notice, a lot of people, like I was watching a video the other night and I'll put it in the description box, and it was of the Young Turks, I think, and they were talking about like homelessness. They're like, why is homelessness rising across America? And all these people were talking about like, oh yeah, there's these underlying mental health issues that are causing people to be homeless. And so they're like, this is the reason why you can't just like give people homes. You have to give them like homes and programs or something, and that's the way that they're going to improve their lives. And I just don't think that that's the case. Like, homeless people need homes, and obviously homeless people need jobs. There's a lot of drug addicts, like functional drug addicts, who have jobs. So like, yeah, drug use is not the reason that people don't need homes. Also, there's a lot of people with mental health issues who have homes. So like, mental health is not like the reason that someone doesn't have a home. Like, and I think that it's a very strange thing in America for people to point every ill in society as pointing to someone and being like, we have a mental health crisis. No, I think in America there's actually just a culture crisis. Like, there's a culture crisis because I will say this very like loudly and distinctly. I do not feel like immigrants are facing the culture crisis. That's actually the one crisis that they are not facing. They might face quite a lot of assimilation issues into American traditions and customs, but they are not facing a culture crisis, which America as a whole is facing a culture crisis because there's this idea of a cultural melting pot which is not working. That's the issue. Nowhere else in the world are people trying to believe and live under this guise that like every single culture is supposed to be able to like live together harmoniously and there's never going to be any problems. That isn't reality. That's why people have borders, and that's why they have visas, and then like there are reasons that people have these things in other places in the world, and for some reason like everyone just believes that this is not a thing that should be in America. Like, oh, it's so wrong, it's so exhausting. And a part of the I would say culture crisis, the thing that I'm talking about, it's the same thing that Madeline brought up with the scapegoating, right? Like, let's say that you live in a Mormon family in Utah, but you don't want to be a Mormon. You're going to go through kind of a cultural crisis in your community because everyone's telling you to live in this one way and you don't want to live in that way. If you are an extreme conservative living in California, you're going to have an issue because it's like so liberal there that you're not going to find the culture and community and society of, Orthodox Christians that you probably seek to build community with and who hold your values. You're going to have a culture crisis. If you are a person who is very familiar with a fast-paced city somewhere like Manhattan or San Francisco or London, and then you go somewhere like fucking Eastern Tennessee or some shit, like, you're gonna have a fucking culture issue. They don't have the shit that you're accustomed to there. They don't have it. Like, people, when you mention certain things, there's not going to be other people who can relate to you at all. And that's just how it is. So there's us in the community that I've built for myself. Thank you guys for being here too. If you're new here, welcome. I'm Olivia. I've created some old playlists that you can go back and watch. I guess I will put some of those in the description box, but if you also check my page, the playlist should be there. The last time I organized it, they were there, so I didn't move them. Anyway, where was I going with this? Yeah, like having other people who are like alive, who at least they don't have to have gone through your experience, but they at least have to be able to like hear you out and understand where you are coming from. This is a really huge issue that I've had with my family, and it's actually caused me a lot of like mental health issues because I kept looking at my family saying, why don't you understand? Why don't you understand? Why won't you change? Why don't you understand? And then now there's a lot of people who have come out with it. There's a few major concepts like kind of the idea of like the selfless cat woman as like a trope. There's that idea, which I actually think is a very powerful idea. That's not the point though. Then there's also this like there's this idea of like prior generations having it so much better than our generation, and there's a real need for us to acknowledge that. I think that that is actually important because I feel like some people believe that like we have the same opportunities that our parents had, and like we don't, like at all, like at all. And there's a girl who basically was she was just fucking yelling about it, like, you had everything, we have nothing, you have everything. Like, I don't think, we're not gonna get social security, like that money is gonna run out, and there's no social safety net, and there's no public funds or programs that are going to like take care of us. And that's a fucking issue because like we too are going to get old, and we too are going to need shit, and like we don't have it, and we don't really have a way of getting it. And the older people in society are basically saying like, we don't even give a shit. Like, figure it out. We figured it out. Like, they didn't figure it out. They just kind of took the money because it was there, and now there's no more money. So yeah, that's just fucked up. And I think that that's also another thing that's really, really, really quite frustrating. I think that is more, there was a population video that I watched yesterday. I highly encourage you to watch that as well. It was talking about how like in Ethiopia, like women still have a very high percentage of like children or something. It's like the replacement rate is high. So like most women are having like 4 or 5 children, like most women, and that's very high compared to a lot of other places just in the world. And I keep saying this, like, I want to see more Habesha women making content about things. It's really important. Africa is the youngest country on Earth, continent on Earth, and many of the countries there have a very young population. These people are coming online every day, every second, every minute. They're coming online, and they are going to find your content. So make it. So I don't know another thing to say. That's what you should do. You should either make content, make it for them. And I think tell the truth, like talk about the society in the way that it is right now. Not the way that you wish it would be, not the way that if in an ideal world it would change to like make it better, but really explain the bullshit of it right now, because I think that's the part that's missing. It's our perspectives that are missing, our nuanced perspectives, okay, that are fucking describing like, here's what's wrong, here's how they fucked it up, here's how I wanted to see it change. And nobody's saying that. They're just trying to pretend like it's all good when it is not all good. It's not all good, okay? I think also like, I really appreciate the YouTubers who are advocating for better help and using talk therapy and things like that, because I do feel like if you are in a situation where your family members, your community members, your coworkers, your friends, whoever it is, they can't relate to what you're saying, as in like you don't feel heard or you don't feel like they understand where you're coming from, that is a fucking issue. Like you need to be in a space, or you need to live in a world where you know that there's other people who share your experience. Like, you are not the first human going through whatever the fuck it is that you're going through, even if the other people don't understand. And I think that that is the problem with America. Like, people there, and it isn't like everyone, obviously, it's a very large country, but a lot of people, especially in terms of like the Black experience, like they don't understand that there are, first of all, there's a whole continent of Black people who look very different. There's not like one Black looking person, and they are all living like full lives that are like complicated, like they are participating in the full human experience. But America has like demonized Black people and dehumanized them for so long that like we don't, really like in the country, there's just not like stories of real living full Black humans. And that is like, it's a disability. So it's like a disability to be a Black person in America. But as soon as you leave there, you're able to like see how like, oh my God, there's all these other people who have these like full and complex lives that have nothing to do with like the disability and debilitating nature of like there's like the political correctness, these like pseudo societies, the expectations of this or that. I feel like a lot of the Black people who actually end up reading James Baldwin, I feel like they understand, because he was talking about it and he gave so many talks about it, and it's just like, so he wrote basically everything he wrote when I feel like he went to London. So ask yourself, how is it that the greatest Black writers that we have, they've all left America, and all of a sudden they've had this moment of like, oh my God, I can see clearly. Like, maybe, I don't know, take it as a sign for yourself that you might see shit a little bit clearer once you leave. Anyway, yeah, I don't know. That was the main point that I wanted to make in this video, and I just needed to get that off of my chest because it was bothering me.